And can we break down for the people, just because I want to know as well, when you say cash flow, what would be the difference from revenue? Because someone say, well, I'm doing 70,000, 60,000 a month, but I'm still in the negative. So what is the bank looking at, and what am I doing wrong for the bank?
All right, so there's a couple of things that you are doing wrong.
What's up, world? Welcome back to the Tuned In with Tony podcast. And I've got my friend Gamal Codner here. And literally, guys, you guys know me for doing t-shirts, for just all my whole experience through e-commerce. And I have failed many times, had many successful triumphs as well. But I really felt like the people watching this show are just like me. They either have a t-shirt business, they're selling a product, and then they have high revenue, but they're like, my business has such high expenses. And once they ship out all their orders, they're like, where is the money? So my friend Gamal Codner has literally built a direct-to-consumer brand, which many of you may know is a beard oil brand for men that he actually exited and sold. And I wanted to bring him on the show because I feel like so many people do not focus on building a brand that could be sold. They're just building a brand, working in a warehouse just like I was, working 14-hour shifts, having late orders out, bad customer service. And we're going to correct all of those issues today by bringing the expert, Gamal. Welcome to the show, my brother.
What up, my guy?
Yeah, man, I'm so glad that you're here. I've been seeing you on Instagram. I think we've kind of maybe seen each other, you know what I mean? And I remember when I saw Fresh Heritage, I just felt like your brand was so intact, right? I felt like the pictures were great. The way you had the brand was there. And then when I saw the press release that you sold it, it only made sense, right? And where it took my mind to is, was it always like that? Did you start the brand in a way of building it to sell?
The short answer is yes. The long answer will give some clarity to that. So before being a brand owner, I was actually a business guy. So
Yeah.
I was making six figures in my 20s in corporate, essentially as a strategic advisor to lower middle market companies. Those are companies doing $10 to $100 million a year.
Okay.
And we were working with their C-suite along with their attorneys and their CFOs to pretty much identify and mitigate risk. So I was on that side of things. Then I spent some time in M&A. I met a mentor, a black guy, Jamaican guy as well.
Is that acquisitions, mergers and acquisitions?
Yep,
Okay.
mergers and acquisitions. And I randomly into this guy who was black, and he had all the attention. I'm like, yo, who is this guy? He had like a different aura about him. And I found out that he bought and sold businesses for a living. Mm-hmm. And so you hear people wholesaling and flipping homes and cars. This guy flipped businesses. And right around the time I met him, he just sold a business for about $900 million to Dell. He was black and he was Jamaican in my neighborhood, in my community. I'm like, I got to get to know him.
Right.
So I pretty much spent all my waking hours outside of work, hanging with him, learning from him. And over that couple of years, I helped him deploy about $50 million into different businesses. And I got the courage and the stupidity to go out and try to buy a $15 million company on my own. So I raised all the money with his help in like 45 days and spent months trying to buy this company. Long story short, I failed. Like right at the end, some things happened that were outside of my control. The stock market tanked in the sector I was in. And so we didn't close the deal. And that left me with $240K in debt. My first year out of corporate and entrepreneurship. And so when I got out of the depression of like being this much in debt and all the shame of, leaving my job to go do this only to fail, that lesson, right? It's kind of like everything that in life happens for you, not to you. And so that lesson in that on how to buy, sell, what investors look for, what buyers look for, all that M&A process that I kind of balled up to like a loss, that really helped me figure out how to do things intentionally in my own brand. Mm-hmm. So I was on the other side of giving checks. I wanted to get checks. And so when we built Fresh Heritage, my one-page business plan was literally to sell in 3 to 5 years.
Got you.
So that's exactly what we did.
So multiple things that I heard, right? And for a good advice for people is exposure is so important, right? Like I told you my story of going broke in e-commerce and now becoming successful in digital, but I wouldn't have been able to do that without seeing it. So this guy in your neighborhood being exposed to something that he did of buying and selling businesses, it just opened your eyes. What I want to know is when you said you raised capital, right? And you had raised it from all of these people, what is that experience like? And then I'm assuming you raised more than $240,000. So how did you go $240,000 into debt?
Yeah. So, I mean, my neighborhood was Bucket. So it wasn't like I
Yeah.
was like living out some random place.
Decatur.
Right. So like
Where I'm at.
exactly. But like so like proximity helps. And so like paying to be close to people, movers and shakers. Even when we actually exited our business and we moved to Florida, we lived right on the beach in this condo. And the other people there were like super rich, right? And so we
Right.
just wanted to get that exposure. So I'm always big on like paying to be in the rooms. And so what happened was we raised about 15, but when that happened,
15 million.
15 million.
Okay.
Like right under, it was like 13 point something. But roughly it was a $15 million transaction. And then what happens is though, like all these things happen with the M&A sale. So like you got to pay a broker to like, you got to pay the commission, and then you got to do what's called quality of earnings from your bookkeepers. Essentially, the business say they make this money, they go and do like forensic bookkeeping to make sure when they say they made 10 grand this day, it actually like backs up. So it's not like, fraud. So you got to pay them to do that. All these legal fees, like you got to have a purchase agreement. You got to have like an NDA. So all the transaction expenses that occurred were about just under $250,000. So what happened was I was supposed to send all this documentation like on a Thursday to the bank to wire the money. So we raised equity, mezzanine debt, and senior debt. And I was supposed to send this information in to get like $7 million, which was pretty much the majority of what I needed to start the process to wire the sellers. Well, I sent it on Friday because I was out celebrating already, right? In my mind, it's closed. 10 months of work, I'm done. Like everything's there. But what happened was because it was Friday, the bank didn't send the money on Friday. They actually rolled that over into Monday because they ended their workday early on Friday. So over the weekend, it was in oil and gas. Oil and gas went from like $150 or $130 a barrel to $30. So on Monday morning, the bank president was like, yo, F this. I am not giving a cent to anything in oil and gas. I just want to see what's happening, right? And so we got like pretty much stuck. And they never came back around, and they were like, hey, look, like I get it. I know we promised you. We got all these paperwork that you just signed and sent over, but it is better for us to just end here than give you this money. Like, so it was what it was. So I got stuck with that money. So that's how I got in $240K in debt with that transaction. But the process for raising money was what I gathered. And with investing in businesses, private equity, whatever, it's all about managing risk.
Okay.
And so what they look at is like risk or no risk. And so when our business, why we're able to be fundable from like banks and credit cards or whatever, is because I understood how banks looked and analyzed risk. Because I just raised millions of dollars, right? Sure, certainly I could raise $100,000, whatever, $500,000, whatever a normal e-commerce business needs to function. And so understanding how underwriters, investors, buyers look and analyze a deal and realizing it's way different. Like entrepreneurs see upside.
Yeah.
Investors, buyers, bankers see downside. And so the more you could mitigate how much you swing to the bottom, you're going to be in better hands to be investable and buy or sellable or bankable. But we as entrepreneurs always look at upside, and we kind of gloss over the downside of our business.
So one thing that you said was making an e-commerce business bankable. And I noticed that when I was always in e-commerce, I was always taking cash advances with Shopify, PayPal, just anything that was available to get money quick. And one of the reasons was because e-commerce doesn't slow down. So my window of having the capital in order to move fast was very slim because orders needed to go out. So what did you do that made your businesses bankable so that a bank would look at it and not just throw this to the left?
Yep. Great question. So the MCA loans are probably the biggest thing that guarantee kills your e-com business, right? So e-com, even though they're profitable, even though they generate a ton of revenue, they suck at cash flow.
They do.
So most people talk about revenue. Those are screenshots you see. But with that, you never know how much do they actually keep. What's the customer support like? How far behind were they on shipping orders out? How they kill their negative reviews? So screenshots are screenshots, right? I got a couple of them too, but it doesn't tell the whole story. A few people talk about profit, but no one talks about cash flow. And e-com has a negative cash flow cycle. It's because even though you may be profitable, you may not actually have the cash in the bank to service any debts. And so that is what I learned while working in M&A. So let me explain. On day one, you put 50% down to order some inventory. That takes 6 to 8 weeks to get here. It's called 2 months. And then you typically order 3 months of inventory because it takes like a couple of weeks to get here. So you never want to be running out. So what that means is in 2 months, when you get 3 months of inventory, it's going to take you an additional 3 months to fully sell through it, just if you stay flat. So you spend money on day one and you fully recoup it on month 5. But your P&Ls will show revenue, less expenses, and profit. But you just tied up 5 months worth of inventory in the capital. So even though you're on paper, it shows that you have profit, your bank account says something different because you got to front the money to start ordering inventory. And it's a never-ending process. So what most founders don't realize is that even they're focused on growing revenue and profit, but they actually don't have any cash. And without cash, you can't really grow your business. And so what happens is, let me break it down. So it's quarterly accountant is the kind of model to think through. So if you make 10K a month, 25% goes to your cost of goods sold, 25% goes to your marketing expenses to get the word out, to convert, 25% goes to warehouse, Klaviyo, Shopify fees. And ideally, you should have 25% left over. So in this case, it's $2,500. But in that example I just told you, you got to take $2,500 of inventory times 3 right now. So you're putting $7,500 up to front inventory that you're not going to get back until 5 months. So for that month that you buy the inventory, you're going to show 10 months of 10K of profit, but now 2,500 times 3 of expenses and cost of goods sold. So now you're actually negative. So when a bank looks at your bank statement, they're not looking at just revenue and profit. They're looking at revenue, profit, cash flow, because cash flow is an indicator of what kind of debt can I service? And if they say too many months of just negative cash flow, they're like, how the hell are you going to pay the loan in the months where you're not making any money?
And can we break down for the people, just because I want to know as well, when you say cash flow, what would be the difference from revenue? Because someone say, well, I'm doing $70,000, $60,000 a month, but I'm still in the negative. So what is the bank looking at, and what am I doing wrong for the bank?
All right. So there's a couple of things that you are doing wrong. And so the first is you got to set your books up, your QuickBooks or your P&Ls up in accrual-based accounting. So you're not supposed to do this from the IRS until you're like, I think $5 or $20 million. So most people, you don't have to. So bookkeepers don't do it. But why that's important is because accrual-based kind of takes into consideration, in that example, if you're on cash-based account and you're doing 10K and you spent 7,500 on expenses, it would show that you're negative. But what accrual takes into account is, all right, that money is now inventory, which is an asset. So it would only negate how much money you spent that month to actually generate that 10K in revenue. So it's different. It's not taken into consideration and debiting the entire inventory order purchase. It is only taken into consideration how much of that inventory did it require you to generate 10K in sales. So what that allows you to do is stabilizes your books a little bit better. So it doesn't show those high swings every time you order inventory. It'll only debit COGS, cost of goods sold, for how much what was the cost of the goods sold to generate that revenue. Very different from how much inventory did you buy that month.
Got you.
So that's the main difference. Where profit is just the basics of revenue minus cost of goods sold and expenses for the month. What it's not indicating is that you're tied up months of that profit in advance to go front inventory.
And that makes so much sense too, because just from people not understanding why e-commerce businesses go into debt or why the owner doesn't have more money. And, because what I always noticed with me was I was literally, and I think a lot of people may go through this, scared to take money out of my business bank account because the expense load was always so heavy. It was always needing new shipping bags, always paying for payroll, some part of equipment going down. And I just felt selfish if I took the money that my business wouldn't be able to operate. And then,
that's real though.
Yeah. So talk about that.
Yeah. So that's the biggest problem. So most people are like, I want to grow, I want to grow, I want to grow. But until you solve your negative cash flow problem, which by the way, it's completely solvable. And majority of the brands, you can actually solve this problem. But until you solve it, you're just putting a Band-Aid on a problem. You're not really fixing it, right? Because if let's say you go get the money for the 10 grand month, and then 6 months down the road, all right, let me say it this way. Most people think they're going to solve the problem by growing. That's also horrible idea.
Yeah.
So so most people are like, I don't have any money to buy inventory. I'm going to either take these PayPal, Shopify loans, or I'm going to grow. Two of the worst ideas you can do because you're not solving the problem that's really affecting you.
Yeah.
It's not a growth problem. and it's not a inventory problem. It's really a cash flow problem.
Mm-hmm.
See, like you would eliminate this problem if essentially when you spend money to buy inventory, you can make that money back within a month.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could pay your expenses. You don't have the problem. The problem most people have is they have inventory in their house, in their warehouse that they bought months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So they never fully take your money out. And so like, let's say you spend 10 grand on inventory and you sell the majority of it, but not all. After doing that a few months, you're going to have months and months of profit tied up in inventory in your warehouse because it's not turning. So that's the problem with that. And like the negative cash flow problem is until you figure that out, growing doesn't make sense. Because now when you go to $50,000 a month, now how are you going to fund 5 times more of a purchase order if you couldn't support it at 10K? So like the problem always persists. And other people are like, you know what? I'm going to get an investor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I'm going to get this investor.
Yeah.
Give me, I'm going to raise $100,000.
Maybe because it slows the payback time down. They think maybe that will help.
But now you create a new problem. Now you gave up equity in your business for inventory. Think about it. If you're going to essentially, let's say you're raising $1 million, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say your business is worth $1 million and you're raising $250,000, right? So you're giving up 25% of your business for this $250,000. That's fundamentally how it works. Real simple, right?
Yeah.
So then you're going to take 50 of it to go buy inventory. That essentially means you gave 5% up of your company to buy inventory.
Yeah. Terrible idea.
Horrible. No one's talking about that.
Right.
Now, not only is that horrible for that reason, it's horrible for a second reason because you don't solve the problem. Now, when your company grows, you're going to go back and do that again and keep doing it. By the time you get ready, like 5 years down the road, you'd have gave up 10, 15% of your company in inventory. That's stupid.
Yeah. And I notice a lot of people do that as well. It's just like when they're starting out these businesses, it's like, oh, I need $20,000 to get my inventory. Then they go to a best friend who's successful at the moment, and then they get them to invest. And then down the road, they notice that, as a partnership, they're not very well working together. And then the rift comes behind, you know what I'm saying? Or comes to fruition or whatever.
100%.
So that's super important. But going back to the money and what you were talking about with just this cash flow, I noticed every single time that I would take out a cash advance, the money would be gone from that cash advance within a month, right? Yep. And I would be right back at the same issue.
Or even
worse. But now what would happen is I still owe 10 to 12 months of payments back, which is what was worse. You know what I mean? So a lot of people always hit me up and they're like, Tony, I got a Shopify capital loan. Should I take this loan? And it's like, when is a good time to take a cash advance loan?
The only time I would do it is if you know for sure you are about to hit like real big and you just need this money
to bridge.
So like a couple of founders, clients, they have gone on to like TV shows or where they know like money's about to come in. Yeah. And so that makes sense because it's like quick, it's always available. You could get it and do what you need to do to make sure you have inventory to generate the sales you need. But and this is also controversial, it is actually a much better idea to take a high interest credit card versus taking a cash advance loan.
Definitely. And that's what I'm kind of on because I was hearing, just talking to friends in the webinar game that are playing at a super high level. And what I started to look at, and I can see where someone disagrees with me who's coming from a traditional standpoint of only getting like loans for cars and homes. But when you look at the amount of money that these cash advances are getting from you, and this is where they trick you at. They trick you because it says $20,000 tomorrow in your bank account, 25 total payback, maybe more, usually never less than that. But it's how aggressive they're taking this money. Daily payments, weekly payments. You have no time to create cushion to even operate at the best way. But with the credit card, some people may, disagree with this, but where I agree with you is I remember I had a friend, I saw his credit card bill. It was like a $30,000 credit card bill that he had ran up. The minimum payment was $300 something. What I looked at it was, if I would take a cash advance loan for $30,000, I would probably be paying about $5,000 back a month.
Correct.
This is at least, even though there is interest, right? So we're going to kill that limiting belief. It's giving him more time to hopefully, if he put that money in the right place, to pay that back and wash that interest.
Correct. So I have this thing called the snake that's going to kill you first, right? And what most founders are not doing is they're not focusing on the thing that's going to kill their business first. They're distracted and focusing on the wrong thing. So ecom, I kind of have 5 buckets of problems, right? It's like a traffic problem, a conversion problem, a product problem, which is like supply chain, kind of funding the product, all that stuff, and like a support problem, and then a cash flow problem. So like support, team, all that kind of stuff, and then a cash flow problem. What happens is most people, when they can't order inventory, they're like, man, I got to fix my sales. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That's a cash flow.
Yeah.
Or when they're like, I need to get these loans, that's a cash flow. So if you're trying to solve a cash flow problem, a high interest credit card is a way better solution to solving a cash flow problem than a MCA loan, or because they give you that money and they kill your cash flow. So you already was having difficulties paying, managing your debt, and they're going to take 5 or 10% of sales.
Yeah.
Daily, weekly, whatever it is, typically daily.
And PayPal is actually more. Cause I mean, Shopify, because it's
Like
the
15,
lowest is
17%.
10%, then it goes 15%, then 20%. And I noticed from my experience, the 10% you noticed, but you didn't. But that small, which is hard to read, jumping to the 14%, I always saw the gap. You know what I mean?
But think about it. Like if you're doing $100K a month and you have $80K of like, expenses, cost of goods sold, all that stuff, and you're left with $20K, that's 20%. So if they're taking 10 to 15% of that, you're essentially taking your profit.
Yeah.
All that just eats your profit up. So it hurts, and most people don't realize that. And not to mention what I just mentioned earlier, that 20% is what you're using to front inventory.
Yeah.
So it's like you're on a hamster wheel. So if they're essentially taking that out, so now you're going to need more money because you have less cash flow to come in with in another 2 or 3 months. A much better solution is taking $100,000, even on a 25% interest card, because you get to choose your payments back. And so that solves your cash flow issue. So with both these examples, Shopify, you take $100,000 month 1, you don't fully make your money back on month 5. Your product only comes on month 2, but on Shopify, they're going to start asking for their money back on day 1.
Yes.
Day 2. Credit card, you spend $100,000, even if it's 25% interest, that's $25K. You're not spending $25K to make $100K. Let's say on average, you're going to turn $100K of products into a $400K of revenue. So you're paying $25K to make $400K, different math. So it's really like 6%, right? And then not only that is because you're taking on a credit card, in month 2, when you only sell 1,000 units or whatever, 50K worth of units, you could only pay back that amount. So you have flexibility when you pay it back. So what I was doing was funding my stuff through a line of credit or credit cards because I could manage my repayment terms.
Got you.
So that allowed me more cash flow so that I could have more flexibility in how I spent my money. So I could make better long-term decisions, not just based on short-term decisions, based on how much cash I had.
Got you. Did you have any preference for the credit card, or was this the one that you had at the time?
Yeah, so I'm not like one of those like credit people and all that stuff. So there's probably way better solutions. But like Chase is great because like we got credit cards like month 1, right? They don't need a whole bunch of history. So that was good. And most of their cards, you have 0% interest for the first year. But even if it's a high interest thing, like I would pay $25,000 to generate $400,000 any day. And APR is annual percentage rate. So if I take 6 months to turn around, my interest rate is not really 25%. That's for the annual. My interest rate's only 12.5%, which is like the same thing you're getting through Shopify. Yeah. And so it's a much better deal, right? Yeah. So I did that. And then the other thing is Amex for credit cards. So at any given point, I'm like $1 million plus in points just because I'm running everything through my Amex bill. I posted on social one time, my monthly Amex bill was about $90K. And that used to be my revenue goals. Like, I'm like, yo, I got liabilities. That used to be my revenue goals. Like it's a blessing and a curse. But I do that because they give 2 or 3x or even 4x points. So I used to use the points for other things like free money. Yeah, because that could be like turn that into your lifestyle, the points. So for people who are watching this, like, hey, that sounds like a great idea, because I was literally thinking about pulling the trigger on the Shopify loan or the PayPal. And for discipline wise, is what I'm asking this, would you just let the revenue that's coming in from your store sit in an untouchable account in a sense? You're using daily operations on the Amex and then you're just moving it over? Yeah. So very good disclaimer. this is not financial advice, right?
Yeah.
So we have a program where we teach it. So like getting the money is just one problem. It's how you effectively use it is how you really solve the problem. So how you pay for product, how you pay back product, and how you order product, all three are needed to solve the problem. Just getting the money doesn't solve it. It could probably just get you in a worse position.
Yeah.
So there's a certain way you need to track everything to be able to figure out how much exactly you pay back. You don't need to pay back more and you don't need to pay back less. So there's a specific way that you have to like manage and like reorder and pay back stuff in order for this all to work.
Got you. So just to break it back into Fresh Heritage story, right? I know we've talked a lot of technical things that entrepreneurs definitely needed to know. But when you first started Fresh Heritage, did you have any other e-com businesses before then?
Good question. So I was actually doing something called affiliate marketing, which is almost like drop shipping, where I was selling skincare and beauty products and weight loss products.
Okay.
And it was all just direct response marketing. So heavy on Facebook ads, driving to a funnel to sell. But those products weren't ours. But I was spending $5,000 and $10,000 a day on ads for like a good minute. So I was very confident in like copy, how to market products, etc. And then I had an ad agency where we ran ads for a bunch of different e-com brands. And around at the same time, I launched this brand, and this kind of took off. We went from 0 to 60K in like our first 90 days. So very quickly, like I didn't have the capacity to do both things.
Right.
But I only knew marketing. I only knew marketing. I didn't know anything about operations. So I was, I grew my business and I kind of grew myself to be a golden prisoner, right? I was like working these 12, 14-hour days because I had no systems, no team. So I eventually had to like figure out all this other stuff, like the operation systems. I knew finance from big business world, but I had to like break it down in a way to like reverse engineer it to be working for eCom. And so we just kind of figured all this other stuff out later.
Yeah. Okay. So then when you started and I remember you said you had already had the exposure from the guy in your neighborhood. You had a 1-page business plan when you started Fresh Heritage. At that moment, was the goal like, I'm going to run this business in the best possible way so that it's bankable and sellable? Or were you not even on that at the start of Fresh Heritage?
So on the start, it was bankable and sellable. But I did get caught up in this IG lifestyle. I ain't gonna front. So like we got caught up in hitting the revenue marks, screenshots, all the awards from Shopify, Founder, all this other stuff, being on the podcast. I got in my head. But it wasn't until I lost my ad account. We're spending, 4 figures a day on ads. And it wasn't until I lost my ad account that I realized I was really building a Ponzi scheme. And when I no longer had a way to generate daily sales, I realized, holy crap, all my profits is tied up in this damn inventory.
Yes.
And we just like hit our biggest inventory order and it was just sitting there. And so I realized I only had 2 months worth of cash left to save our business, or else we were going to have to file bankruptcy. Here I go, bragging, making 6 figures a month, but really having no money to pay stuff. And so I went back, talked to my mentor. Hey, here's the problem I'm figuring out. I'm like, dude, you've been solving this problem for like 7-figure problems. Like, get out of here. Like, this is an easy problem to fix. But I realized e-commerce was kind of a new business. Like sophisticated people hadn't really figured this stuff out yet. So I took 2 months and rebuilt my business. So instead of like a 15% margin, we jumped up to like a 40% plus profit margin, which was key. I no longer want to depend on Facebook ads as a way to get new clients. I shifted from revenue to profit. And I shifted from new customers to building out my AOV and LTV. So we added a membership program with over 3,000 people.
And just to pause you, just so people know, average order value is AOV and LTV is lifetime value of a customer.
Correct. And so there's really only 3 ways to grow a business, like regardless of the business. Convert more customers, increase how much money they spend with you each time they buy, and get them to come back and buy more frequently. And so for me, and most of IG and most of like LLC Twitter, that means get new customers.
LLC Twitter.
But what I realized in that moment was I was wasting my money.
Yeah.
I focused then on increasing my conversion rate. So I went from a 1.5 to a 4% conversion rate. What that did for me was I was able to spend the same amount of money on ads or less and still get the same amount of customers. So that was much more profitable, right?
Yeah.
And so we did all these things to rebuild a much better business. And so that is the business that I like about, a year and a half in, I had to like refocus. And pretty much from that on point, we had this like well-oiled machine.
So in the micro of what you just said, did you pretty much focus on email and text marketing?
Yeah. So email, text, and so to fix the LTV piece, it was create a membership program and created a funnel specifically for that, which I can touch on. Our best customer bought from us 46 times within a 2-year period.
Yeah.
And then email and SMS, so owned media. I started growing an SMS list. I didn't even have an SMS list. In the year that we sold, just on that SMS list alone, it generated almost $400,000 for us.
That's crazy. So what I like to tell people a lot of times, right? In my webinar 4 funnels, in my slides, I talk about that. I give an analogy how a lot of businesses are built on sand, right? Even myself have built an e-commerce business built on sand because it's so heavily dependent on Mark Zuckerberg, his Facebook ads, Instagram. But as like you said, as soon as your ad account gets disabled, which is very common, next thing you know, your customers don't even know you anymore because you were just so much appearing in their feed. That was the only reason they were buying from you. What I love so much about funnels and what I'm educating people on is the fact that it is owned media. So as we take them through this customer buying experience, we're always collecting data, whether they purchase then or not. It's the fact that we can follow up with them, nurture them through email sequences, and also send those texts. Well, my question for you now is, how was your funnel built? Because I do have Shopify people. And what I wonder is, I'm like, what if we tested taking your, let's say candle brand that I'm talking to. What if we take your top performing product, have a whole sales page on just that product, but then it upsells to maybe you add 3, then downsells, and then has complementary products. What was your funnel like?
Yeah, so a couple of business principles I live off of. And so the 2 that are relevant to this is simple is always better. So I'm not a big fan of like crazy complicated funnels. And none is like right or wrong. It's just like a philosophy, right?
Yeah.
But like Zapier breaks, I don't want to be like trying to figure out what's going on. It's like it's simple. When something breaks, there's a saying that you can make something so complex that you hide the problem, or make it so simple that the problem is obvious. I like that. And so the other part of it is building a business on fundamentals versus trends. I don't build my businesses off of trends because by the nature of it, they only last so long. And the minute like a popular person starts talking about it, then everyone's knowing about it and it's no longer going to be as effective. So the fundamental thing that I did to create the funnel for our business was the same thing I was doing in 2013, 2014 when I got into ads. It is have a simple pre-sale page or a blog or whatever that talks about the product's features and benefits, social proof and reviews, and through a format of a hero's journey. And I bundled a product there. So our main traffic source and our main traffic URL, 80% of our budget, daily budget, just went to this one landing page with this one hero's journey story with this one product. That's it.
So what's crazy about that is so many people are so focused on having a lot of products on their store. But you have the main product as the core bait to bring them through a journey to see other products, right? Or would it be complementary products?
Complementary. So we built our business. So that's the other thing. We never built our business. We sold grooming products to men, as most people will say, right? Black men. But we always said that we were building a community of like growth-oriented, high-performance Black men. And we monetize that relationship with them through our grooming products. Very subtle difference.
Yeah.
And so we always try to align ourselves as a tool to help them be the most confident version of themselves each day. We never thought we were trying to sell people beard oil. And so because of that, because we know we're trying to be a tool to help out in an area of their lives or solve a problem or pain in their lives, the bundled products that we put together solve that problem.
Got you.
And the reason that you should upsell and buy these other products is because it helps you solve that problem faster or better or more efficiently. So when I see people throwing random products in, I could tell it's not in service of being in service or a help or value to the actual customer. It's just in service of them trying to grow their AOV.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always click.
Got you. And one of the things that's really important, what you said as well, is one thing that I like to preach is impact over income. So people hear that and they're like, oh, why would I focus on that? I need money, right? But what I'm trying to tell them is when you focus on the impact of the product that you're offering to people, you build community around it. And next thing you know, the income starts to flourish more than you expected. So what I like that you said is you had a story. Yes, we're selling beard oil, but we're building high value Black men. You know what I mean? So then now they're graduating together. So break that down as far as story.
Yeah, so that was my story. So we had a ton of stories. So community is all. that matters, right?
Mm-hmm.
A small company is not going to out market or out product develop Procter and Gamble. It always makes me laugh when people are, oh, this brand sold. Now the formula is going to change. I'm like, dude, you don't think $1 billion company knows how to make this product?
Yeah.
Like think about it.
Right.
Like this mom and pop out of their kitchen, you think they got something figured out that
Yeah.
$1 billion, $500 million salaried chemists don't know how to figure out? Like,
Right.
let's be real. So the only thing you can outcompete a big brand on is community.
Mm-hmm.
Big brands are horrible at being founders.
Mm-hmm.
And so the community is essentially your strategic value, your intellectual property that when you go on to sell is going to be valuable. Because Procter and Gamble could drop $10 million on a Super Bowl commercial, may not get anyone to sign up, may get 5,000 people to sign up, or they could acquire this company that has 100,000 of their ideal customers that's already making money in revenue for the same, even though on paper they may not be doing $10 million in sales.
Mm-hmm.
That's a much more use of their $10 million in sales. So
Yeah.
we were always trying to build a community from day one because
Yeah.
that's how we knew we were going to be valuable when we came to sell.
Got you. So for you building your business, what would you give advice to someone? I have a lot of people, who just find me on Instagram, and then what's so difficult with the e-commerce business is just like you look at their business and you're just like, ugh, you know what I mean? So for you to start, what were the key elements that you focused on to make your brand? Like if they didn't want to focus on Facebook, what are the key elements you focused on to make them want your product? Like how did you scale it to get it in people's hands fast?
Yeah. So the main thing is having something that I kind of call authentic demand.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like, if you understand people's problems and they're generally trying to solve a certain problem, if a product shows up that, reasonably can solve this problem, they authentically just want to try it out, give you the money, buy it just because it solves a pain. Right.
Yeah.
So like, that is what we wanted to build. So I think a lot of customers, a lot of founders skip actually trying to create something of value to the world. And it could even be, this is a product. So like our products help with patchy beard. So it's easy to kind of associate, hey, this helps you with confidence, etc. But even like clothing, like there's certain brands that I wear because of how it makes me feel. Like that's still solving a problem, right?
Right.
So I think most people skip out on that.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is what we got a lot of copycats, but a lot of people skip out on and overlook the value of being different and how that builds community. And so being different and solving a real problem is the main foundation. And then we just use Facebook ads to amplify that because we believed if you put us in front of a high performance man with a beard, we understood them so well that our value proposition was going to be something that they could not say no to. And it was crazy. I did a live the other day talking about how we grew our subscription business to over 3,000 people. And one of the people who were on the program joined and went live. He didn't even have a beard. He bought 28 times, no beard.
What was he buying?
So he was like, I bought into the community. I love what you brothers were doing.
Yeah.
I'm not an entrepreneur, but I love how transparent you were about your journey.
Yeah.
And I love the bigger mission. We also gave back a percentage of our proceeds to an inner city organization that helped inner city Black kids go to college. And collectively, the organization has given out over $250,000 in scholarships. So I knew not only was this genuinely an interest to us, but by sharing that this was an interest to us and bringing the organization involved and our company involved in this mission, not just a personal thing for me, it allowed other people to kind of see like, you know what? I love what they're doing with this money. I love the message. I love the community they're building. And so this is just something my man wanted to be a part of, even though he didn't have a beard.
Man, nice. Yeah, that's community. One thing that you also just said was subscription, right? And then that's a very popular model in e-commerce that I don't think a lot of people know how to perfect. How important was a subscription-based model for your business versus just one-time sales and hoping that they come back?
Oh, it was night and day difference. And
Yeah.
so like if you're under a 30%, if you're under a 30% of revenue from repeat customers, you have an opportunity. And if your revenue is more than 60% from repeat customers, you're not growing fast enough. So somewhere in that 30 to 60 range is like a good sweet spot. So what that does is not only does it give cash flow predictability, right? And so you talked about those months where it's like hot and cold. Having a subscription program with hundreds of people that are going to pay thousands, whatever the number is, right? They're going to pay per month. You could predictably order inventory and manage inventory better. And not only that, but your cash flow has less of those big dips because revenue is kind of consistent. So you can essentially structure your business where your subscription program takes care of all your majority of your overhead.
Yeah.
And so not only does that help you with cash flow and your negative cash flow cycle, but it helps you become bankable as you go to sell. It helps with more predictability in income for the buyers because they're like, all right, we have this set amount of revenue that we know is still going to be there when we transfer. And not only that, subscription businesses have a much higher multiple than traditional like Amazon multiples.
Nice.
So it's just helped for a bunch of reasons.
And then earlier when you talked about Procter and Gamble versus the mom and pop shop, how did you build a business when you knew that you had, a huge competition, right? And you're like, it doesn't make sense to even focus on them as a competition. So how did you build your business to where it was sellable, but we're not like we have to be bigger than the Procter and Gamble products?
Yeah, good question. So one of the things is you got to figure out what your strategic value is.
Mm-hmm.
So strategic value is kind of like, what do you know how to do uniquely well that is making you some money, but in the arms of someone bigger, it'll be even more valuable for them. And I'll give you an example of that. So back in the day, Home Depot was doing about $1 billion in sales. And there was this other company called blinds.com. They're only doing 100 million in sales, but they were selling blinds really good. They were the number one seller of blinds online. Home Depot could not figure out how to even get close to $100 million of sales selling blinds because they're complicated. Mm-hmm. So when they went to sell, everyone was looking at their numbers and gave them a small valuation. But when they pitched Home Depot, the broker was like, hey, look, you're not buying a blinds business. You're buying a business to figure out how to sell difficult shit online. Mm-hmm. And so if you buy us, you're not, the idea is not to sell more blinds and go from 100 million to 150 million. The idea is to learn how we're selling difficult stuff. Think about cabinets, think about appliances. If you just learn 1% of what we're doing, it's going to make your money back. And so they sold to Home Depot. And Home Depot is now the top 5 retailer of online sales. They way more than made their money back. They made dozens of billions of dollars each year. And so that's strategic value. A lot of small brands know how to do influencer marketing better. They know how to do direct to consumer better than a lot of like legacy brands. And so for us, one of the things that we wanted to say is, what can we do better? What problem are people having? And so Procter and Gamble's of the world, they think that black men are not going to buy expensive products. If you go in Walmart or Target, all the products to black men are like $10, $12 or less. We said, you know what? We don't think that's true. We're building a community of high performance men. We see my man rolling up in Gucci and Prada and this and that.
Yeah.
We know they got it.
Yeah.
They just don't have a reason to spend this money on that.
Right.
So we sold our products for $25, $30 plus. And so that was a real good strategic value for large retailers because they've never been able to crack the code at scale, at volume, being able to sell grooming products to black men with this much margin and profit built in.
Got you. So switching the subject to how you actually found a buyer, right? A lot of times in Shopify, what I hear, right, which is actually kind of funny, is, yo, just throw it on Shopify Exchange. So I want to hear the breakdown of actually you've built the business, you've done the due diligence of making it bankable, but how do you actually find the type of people that want these businesses?
Yeah, so if you are under a certain point, then Shopify Exchange is okay. So like under 100 grand in annual sales, something kind of around there, like, 100, 200 grand. That makes sense because you're essentially don't have a sellable business. You just have like a job.
Yeah.
So most of the people are doing that are like, they're going to work in the business, which is fine. But if you have like a business, which is more like enterprise level, like systems in place, processes in place, and it is packaged together so another company can run it, right? Then you are going to be much more valuable if you go through a broker. And these are like specific people who have relationships with buyers and sellers. And people also will reach out once, people reached out and try to work with us directly. And that happens too. But selling your business is like a whole nother job. Like you're actually running the company and running the process of selling the company. It is the most stressful and time consuming thing I've ever done as a founder, bro. And so why a broker is good is because they not only like have relationships of people who have bought and sold companies from them before, so they have a Rolodex of like qualified people. They also field a bunch of stuff. So for example, when we put our business up for sale through the process, we had over 200 people that were interested in learning more. Like think about how much of a time waste that would have been to answering all 200 people's questions.
Yeah.
Making them sign NDAs, verifying that they have the funds and that they're actually serious. So the broker did all that. And then he brought us to 12 to 15 most qualified, most serious people.
Yeah.
And then because we knew what we were doing and we had this experience, we created a profile of our ideal buyer. So we're like, look, if they're not these, it's not going to work. And
was that because you just didn't want to sell it to anybody?
Not that. It's because these people, a little bit of that, but it's like these people would understand our strategic value. Right?
Yeah.
And so it'll be like, we didn't intentionally do all these things to not maximize our potential exit. And so it's kind of like the idea of a silver dollar, right? A silver dollar is essentially a dollar coin.
Yeah.
But there's these very rare and valuable silver dollars, right? That in the eyes of the right investor, it's actually worth $100,000. But you can't show up to Walmart trying to buy $1 worth of or $50 worth of groceries on this thing. They're gonna be like, "Yo, this is just $1." But it's like the asset in the right hands is valuable, and the asset in the wrong hands is not valuable. But that doesn't mean it's not valuable. That just means it's in the hands of the wrong person. So we created a profile of people who would appreciate the asset that we built for the valuation that we thought we deserved. So that we didn't want to waste our time with people who wouldn't understand it.
Got you. And then selling a business, like what was it? The people that you sold it to, were they doing direct to consumer products already? And then so now after you sell a business, what is that like? Because you're completely removed, right? So do you see Fresh Heritage online still and all of that? And you're just like, that was just a part of your life?
Yeah. So part of what we wanted to have too is someone who, in addition to saw the value, it was very important for us to sell to someone who saw the value and the mission that we're on and would continue to grow in the mission. So a lot of times you see people, they sell out, and our community was always for high performance men of color. We didn't want the brand to now be like a wide open inclusive brand because there's so many out there. So that was something that we also wanted to make sure that the person we sold to not only understood that, but agreed and wanted to see this mission grow further. And a big reason for what we sold, there's like these things called inflection points. Like each layer of like growth in a brand, it opens up like new risk and new rewards and sacrifices. We had gotten to a point where we had like global demand. And I was honest with myself, I didn't know anything about global e-commerce.
Yeah.
And we needed to go into retail, mainly Amazon, and I didn't know anything about that. And so the thought to like risk so much money to figure this out, starting all over again.
Yeah.
Versus cashing out and turning it over to someone who understood global business, understood retail, and understood the value of creating a community and a space for Black men. We wanted to partner with someone who had all of that in common. And so it was more of a partnership where we turned over operations of the brand to someone who had the experience to take it to the next level. But I was actually still involved with the process for the last year.
Yeah. And what's really important about that too, which I want them to understand as well, is just because you start making more money doesn't mean the problems are solved. And the reason why that is because with every new bracket of money that you make, it's like you need a whole entire new system. So let's just say, for instance, when you're first starting out, you're at home doing your business. Even when you get to $1 million, it still could be manageable, right? But then if you jump to a 5 million business, that system that you were using is broken. Yeah. Can't even hold it anymore. So I understand what you were saying when it's like, we've got to this level. But global e-commerce, being in retail, all of that, it's like you may take the biggest L that you've ever had just trying to compete in that market. So it can make sense to exit out. Another question that I have, because I feel like I saw you posted on your Instagram, I didn't truly know it's about the Mael situation, understand what was going on. I saw the backlash, but you were talking about what that means when someone like sells a part of their business and probably what went on. So I want you to kind of break that down.
Yeah, so there's this big thing in our community about like when you sell out. But many people don't understand what it actually means to sell. And so in order to understand that, that is essentially selling some or all your business, right? So when people raise money, they sell.
Right.
When people fully exit, they sell. So normally when people buy your businesses, the sellers maintain some ownership typically.
Yeah.
So when I hear the backlash, it's weird because like they prior raised some amount of money and it was like, oh, good job.
Yeah. Yay.
They sold.
Yeah.
And now when they sold to someone else, it's like, oh, wait, no. Now you sold too much. Like You can have some level of success, but not all of the success. And that's kind of how it was coming across to a lot of Black founders. And so the biggest way, the only way to create wealth, this is something I need to share too. The only way to create wealth, the most predictable way to create wealth, is something I call OBS. Own equity in a business. Let me start over.
Okay.
The only way and the most predictable way to create wealth is OBS. Own equity in a business, build the value of that business, and then sell. Some or all. OBS. Own, build, sell.
Makes sense.
And so when you study the wealthiest people in North America, the wealthiest Black people, they've all gone through there. You can go public, which like, the Facebooks and the Teslas and all that stuff, or you can do private like Jay-Z's and Rihanna, where they sell to private companies and they don't go on the stock market. And so when most people hear about an exit, they oftentimes have misguided love for the backlash that they have when they're like, oh, you could have kept this for generational wealth. Well, what do you think generational wealth involves?
Because Drake sold his catalog for like $400 million. Justin Bieber sold his catalog, and they're like, why would they do that? Their family needs is this, and that.
Yeah, like so. What I realize is most people aren't running ecom brands because they truly don't understand what we just broke down about revenue versus profit versus cash flow. If you have these businesses, you're oftentimes not making anywhere near what you think you should be making, and you're actually not even cash flowing anywhere near your profit. So there's a statistic that said if you have a brand and you sell it, 80% of the total earnings you would make from being an entrepreneur comes the day that you sell.
Dang. And yeah, it's like we as Black people have that misconstrued. That's like, you have to hold on to this. You know what I'm saying? But like what you said, like buying and selling, that's the
game plan. Like, I don't think the game plan is like, yo, if you're white and Spanish and Asian, like follow this proven method. If you're Black, you got to struggle through this other stuff based on misguided love. Right. Yeah. And like, it's crazy because, you're talking about the Rihannas and Beyoncés and the Jay-Z's and all that stuff. That's how they're building their wealth. And the other crazy thing is people don't realize that you could say no, and you have certain terms in place when you sell your business. Like, just because you sell doesn't mean the new owner can just do whatever they want with it, right?
Right.
So you can say no to people who don't share a vision and mission that is in alignment with the one that you have for the brand. You don't have to say yes to people. Right. And so I think understanding that too is another thing. Whether they're like, oh, generational wealth, pass it down to your kids or keep it because now they're going to change the formula. Well, that's not always true. Think about the legacy hair care brands that they're now like the, what do you call them? The Pink Moisture. And like the Lusters and all that stuff that's still family owned. Like, you don't know if the grandkids want to keep running the business, right? So cash out and you could do other things with your money.
Yeah. Dang. And what do the global e-commerce brands, the big people, have different that where they may not have these cash flow issues? Like, what are they doing different than at a higher ratio, of course, but that the mom and pop or the single entrepreneur that they're not doing?
They understand cash flow and they raise money. They have a bigger balance sheet, essentially.
And they have the distribution.
So, by the way, the mom and pops can figure this problem out. We solve this problem for the people that we coach. It's just not widely knowledgeable or accessible information. Like no one's talking about it. It's boring, right? Everyone wants to grow to $1 million. No one wants to know, all right, I need to get my finances in place to be able to support growth of $1 million business. So it's totally fixable. If you have about 3 times the amount of available debt than your average purchase order, you don't have this problem anymore. If you change how you order, how you pay, how frequently you order, and how you pay, you don't have this problem again.
And then right now where you're at as an exited founder, I've seen on Instagram, what exactly is Exit Blueprint?
Yeah, so my belief is that exiting your business is the best path to wealth, especially for founders who look like me, but no one's talking about it. And so what ends up happening is if you create a brand that is exitable, you also have a brand that is investable, and you also have a brand that is bankable. And so by starting with the end in mind of having a business that could be exited, you ended up running a much better business. You exit the day-to-day operations because it's something that you have systems in place. You have marketing systems in place that don't depend on ads or social media. So you make money in your sleep. You have systems in your sleep, and you understand cash flow. So Exit Blueprint is essentially a program that we created to help founders of 6 or 7 figure brands finally solve the problem of like jumping off the hamster wheel of being a firefighter in their ecom brand. And you don't have to sell, but just if you set your business up in a way that you can sell, you end up having a business that you've always wanted.
Exactly. I like that. And then what are the qualifications that you need to be in this program?
So we actually have 2 programs. So we have a coaching program that's a 6-month partnership and a mastermind. So they all talk about the same thing. The coaching program, you just need to be doing 6 figures a year. The mastermind, you need
like
to be
just 100,000.
Just 100,000.
Okay.
And those are the foundations that we set you up for to put the cash flow situation, figuring out negative cash flow, setting your operations in place, SOPs, all that stuff, so you can hire and you can work less. And then the marketing systems, the emails, the membership programs, all the things that we talked about, we help you set those up in your business. And then for the mastermind now, you need to be doing about $40,000 to $50,000 per month to really get the value of what we're doing. Because once you're at that point, then investors become interested, and we are hands-on at that place. So we only work with a few people a month in the mastermind, but we do a lot of the work for you. So you need to kind of have the systems and kind of like the things already in place to really extrapolate the value that we're going to bring.
Got you. And the question that I had forgot to ask a little bit earlier was, how much money do you need to be generating to even be sellable, right? Because let's just say for me, I would think like you have to be multi-million dollars to even jump in this arena.
So the minimum is like about $100,000 in profit per year. You're probably going to sell to a like an individual. And then when you jump up to like about $500,000 in profit per year to like 2.5 to 5, then you're going to sell to a small company. And then if you're like 10 to 30, $40 million in revenue, then you're at a space where you can sell to a big company.
Got you. So like, you know how Alex Hormozy all over YouTube, he would always say, we're looking for companies that are 2 to 3 million and above. So at that 2 to 3 million, what do you think that threshold is for him that he's seeing?
Yeah. So what's going on is like arbitrage. So like at the space that he's in, which is kind of what the requirements are for our mastermind, right? Like $500,000 in revenue mark plus to like 3 million. It's kind of like that same space that he's in. And the reason is you've already figured out product market fit. You got a good company, but you just lack systems to like do it more, or you're distracted, or you don't have the support. You're the smartest founder in your company. So you need other smart minds to help you think through strategy and to implement, right? And so what happens is if you sell your company for like under that mark where he's at right now, he's probably buying companies that are 3x multiple. So take whatever you make in a year and he'll pay you 3 years worth of expense, 3 years worth of profit, right? And then what happens is if you sophisticate the company at that range, put systems in place, SOPs, do some of the things that we talked about in this podcast, you can now sell your company for 6x. So what he's doing is arbitraging. He's buying them for 3x, putting systems in place, and then now they're doubled in value, and he's just taking the difference.
So then when they buy these companies, right, these mergers, these acquisitions, all this stuff, are they keeping the people in there and implementing the systems, or is it like founders are gone and they just walk into that warehouse today like, hey, new business?
Yeah, so at that range, most buyers are going to want the founders to stay around just because you don't properly have a business that's running completely without you. You're still the person who knows all the little intricate details. And so in order to like have a real sellable and transferable business, they assume you got to be like a couple million because you'll have like, you know, highly paid other people in your business that could stay without you. So most of the times you're going to have the buyers are going to want you to stay at least for some period of time. You really have to have really tight systems to like fully walk away from it.
Got you. And then you being a founder, right? When they want you to leave, do they pretty much change you from being, you know, owner, entrepreneur to where now you're on a salary? And then as that founder that just sold, you're like, it's a little bit more of a breath of fresh air wide transition because now I'm getting this guaranteed salary. Of course, I'm looking for the next thing, but I don't have to do all the entrepreneurial hunting and fighting to keep this business alive.
Yeah. In an ideal scenario, that's why I believe like, our family, my wife and I are in this coaching business together. She has a lot of operational experience. I have the marketing and the finance side. So like we really believe the future is exits, building brands that are exitable, selling them, rinse and repeat, doing them again. And so it's a great scenario for a founder, bro. Like think about it. if you're an ecom founder, you're probably underpaying yourself because you're afraid to take money out of the company because the company needs it to grow. And you're always sacrificing. Like if you take an L, it's your L. It's not the company's L, right?
Yeah.
And so you finally have this opportunity where someone comes in who has all the money your brand needs to grow, and they could do all the stuff that you don't enjoy doing for you, where you could just focus on your zone of genius. For some, it may be product development.
Right.
For some, it could be community building. So it's a great scenario where you sell, get paid 80% of the total value you would have made if you kept the company running for years. You get 80% of that the day you sell. So like, why wait? Just get all that value. And then you get a team of smart, educated people to do the stuff you hate. And you just show up and do what you like on a guaranteed salary for, it could be a couple months, could be a year, whatever you negotiate. It's a great scenario.
Yeah, it is. So now that let's talk about how businesses are always scaling, refining, making processes better. The fact that you went through the journey of creating Fresh Heritage, the beard oil, making it sellable and have sold now, as you move to your next project, is there a more efficient way that you'll build your next business to sell?
100%. So even though I had that experience coming in and, starting and selling in 4 years, like starting, building it to 7 figures, selling in 4 years, all that is unheard of. That's pretty a tough accomplishment. So the experience we had allowed us to do that, but now we know we could do it better. And so there were certain things that we did in building the business that we learned from, like having lower AOV products and just doing a couple of things, like having such a niche audience. We learned from that so we could like check more boxes. So like all that happens when people are buying companies, and what we kind of worked our way into with this North Star is you just have to check certain boxes. Like for certain brands, you got to do 20 million in sales to be interesting to these people. So like whatever the things are, you just like work on checking them. And so now I know that these check boxes are more important than these. I just prioritize doing those first.
Gotcha.
So our belief is that we want to buy and sell more brands, and we can get to our exit number like in less time, or we can use the same time to get a much bigger exit number through partnering with other operating partners who already have brands.
And one of the last questions that I have, I think this is really good for people in e-commerce, what I've gone through. Do you feel that brands need to ship their own products, or should they use third-party logistics companies?
Man, it really depends. So that is one of the things that we would do differently, is not have in-house fulfillment. Like it served a purpose, and we did all. We manufactured in house, manufactured out of house. We got most of our products done and filled in house. We shipped in house, shipped out. We did a bunch of different things, and that makes selling your business more complicated because the person who's buying it has to either want to take over the lease or be geographically located, or they're going to fire everyone and like move the business. And then like that creates so much more risk, right? The whole thing is like avoiding risk. So the businesses who are like location agnostic appeal to a broader array of buyers.
That's what I was thinking.
But then also like for me, I hated that part. So like if you could just leave me alone and I could make marketing funnels, figure out creative ways to build community and get the money we need and the relationships we need to grow, I'll do that all day. What I don't want to do is wake up every day and deal with a fire in the warehouse. The printer broke, the filling machine ain't working. That was just a distraction from me being in my zone of genius. So that is something I would do differently.
Yeah, because I feel like my experience been in the business for 10 years was, and I tell people this as a mentor, I said, hey, you're telling me what screen press you should buy, what heat press you should buy. Are you trying to start a brand, or are you trying to become a print shop? Right?
Yeah.
And that's a big thing, because what you start noticing is that you buy all this equipment, right? Now that's also killing your cash flow. That's one thing. But then the second thing is, now to keep, money coming in because you're having a cash flow problem, you become the printer for the family. You're doing the family reunion shirts, all this random stuff that has nothing to do with your brand. But if you could focus on the marketing, have a 3PL ship it out for you, I just feel like you can grow bigger. But also for selling, let's say if you were interested in buying the business, now you look at it like, hey, we just have to take on the marketing leg. You know what I mean? So that's my take on it too. I hated shipping. I don't think we should ship. So
yeah, and a couple of founders who I've consulted with who had offers to buy, that was a big like sticking point for potential buyers. Like these are big companies, like companies doing 9 figures a year. they're not a lot of those. That's another good point. A lot of those aggregators, so not like the Procter and Gambles, but like kind of there's hundreds of like these companies who are 100, 2, 3, 4, $500 million, and they are essentially like aggregators for Amazon, or they just have a lot of brands. The majority of those companies don't manufacture. And so this is like a new risk for them. And so like even founders doing like 8 figures that manufacture in house, when they had offers to buy, there was a lot of like contingencies around like, yo, we're uncertain of this manufacturing part. Some of these big companies, they don't have the insurance set up to have like product liability insurance. Oftentimes you as a founder don't have proper product liability insurance. So you kind of been winging it. But now when a big company comes to buy you and they check the past 2 years, you've been selling these products without any product liability. Now what's going to happen if some product that we did like burns someone's skin, right? Or has a negative reaction and there's a $2 million lawsuit? Like these are all things that are like avoidable, right? And so like I would just avoid it if possible.
Yeah.
If the business makes sense for you, I know moving forward for us, we're super interested in companies that do not manufacture in-house.
Got you. So as we come to our conclusion, where can people find you at? Tap in with what you got going on, learn more about how to exit their business. Just give them all the links and descriptions to find you.
Yeah, and hopefully these will be in the show notes. I'll share them with you. But if anything I've said was super valuable, it's a lot of real complex things to just listen to. If you want to see it in paper or in person, you can find me at Gamal Codner on Instagram or codner.co on our website. And we oftentimes have workshops or just video training to kind of help these concepts land a little bit better. So check us out on codner.co or Gamal Codner on Instagram. And I'd love to help you fix this stuff so you can scale your business.
Yep. Y'all heard the expert, man. I'm so glad that you were able to come to the show. I hope everybody watching was able to get a lot of valuable information of how to correct cash flow issues, revenue issues, manufacture, all types of issues that we deal with on the daily with e-commerce business. Make sure you guys jump to the description. Follow my guy, Gamal. We'll see y'all in the next episode. Peace.